The silence before the storm. The fleet moved without sound, cutting across the blackness of space like a blade through silk. 9900 warships, sleek, black, humming with quantum plasma, approached the blue marble that hung quietly in the void. To the Zarashi, Earth was not a mystery. It was a mistake. High Commander Zaurek stood at the helm of the Ascendant Flame, the command vessel at the heart of the formation. His eyes, slitted, silver, inhuman, were fixed on the projection of the planet. Lush, crowded, primitive. He hated it already. These beings have no centralized planetary defense, reported strategist Zila, flicking her mandibles in boredom. Their species is fractured by borders, language, ideology. They are children, Commander. This will be clean. Zaurek didn't look at her. Nothing is clean when it struggles. He had seen enough planetary subjugations to know that even an insect could sting if it believed it had nothing to lose. Still, 9,900 ships was overkill. The fleet had sterilized entire star systems with less. But Earth was strategically placed, rich in resources, close to a newly discovered wormhole. The High Council had demanded total domination, not occupation. Burn their resistance, break their spirit, assimilate or eradicate. In the war chambers, footage of Earth played, humans screaming into handheld devices, firing outdated rifles at each other, waving flags, marching in circles, laughing, kissing, dying. So much noise, so much chaos, so little unity. They still use combustion engines, Zila sneered. Zaurek remained silent. Primitive or not, they were animated. He dismissed the chamber and walked through the silent halls of the ship. The other commanders were making wagers on how long Earth would last. Some said 6 days, others a week. No one predicted more than 2. None of them have studied human history, Zaurek thought. Not really. They saw weakness and disunity. He saw unpredictability, and unpredictability was a predator's worst enemy. Meanwhile, on Earth, chaos took another shape. At NORAD, alarms howled. "We're tracking objects incoming from the outer solar system," said Major Chun, her voice tight. "Thousands. I repeat, thousands." "How many thousands?" asked General Raleigh. The screen updated. Dots filled the space around Earth like falling ash. 9,900 confirmed vessels. All military. The room went silent. Global networks ignited in panic. Some believed it was a hoax. Others prepared for the end. But amid the hysteria, something rare happened. Nations, enemies, allies, neutral powers all saw the same thing: extinction. And extinction had a way of clarifying priorities. Within 24 hours, a shaky global alliance formed. Command centers were linked. Satellites were reprogrammed. Old enemies shook hands over digital links. It wasn't peace. It was necessity. From bunkers, hackers tried to infiltrate alien transmissions. From launch sites, nuclear warheads were loaded. From basements, civilians gathered Molotov cocktails and rifles. The will to resist flared like a forest fire in a drought. And then came the first victory. It wasn't planned. It wasn't elegant. An alien scout vessel entered low orbit over the Pacific Northwest. A group of rogue defense engineers, using hacked telescopic feeds and decommissioned missile silos, launched a jerry-rigged EMP-tipped rocket at it. The projectile shouldn't have worked. It wasn't guided. It wasn't even stabilized. But it hit. The scout ship, small and fast, buckled midair and fell like a burning star into the Oregon woods. For 3 minutes, the internet was unified in celebration. Memes, laughter, hope. Then the live feed of the crash went dark. Alien infantry had landed. Back aboard the Ascendant Flame, Zaurek watched the wreckage report with interest. "A statistical anomaly," Zila muttered. Zaurek allowed himself a slow blink. No, that was instinct. That was anger. He stepped toward the holomap, placing one clawed finger against the spinning Earth. They are afraid, but not paralyzed, not broken. He turned to the command deck. "Begin descent operations. Deploy suppression battalions planet-wide. Make contact. Offer no diplomacy." He paused. "But do not underestimate them. They're not prey. They're something else." Zila raised a brow. "And what?" High Commander, do you believe they are? Zaurek's eyes narrowed. Cornered. The ground screams. The first strike came at 0400 hours. In the deserts of New Mexico, the sky lit up as if God had drawn a line of fire across the stars. The air shimmered with heat and terror. Alien dropships descended like black arrows, their silent engines displacing the wind with unnatural pressure. Dust whipped into spirals around the impact zones. Captain Jordan Reyes, 5th Mechanized Infantry, stood in the shadow of his last working Abrams tank and watched the horizon boil. "Here they come," muttered his sergeant. The alien troops fanned out quickly, tall, insectal figures in reflective armor, moving like liquid over the terrain. Their rifles spat blue pulses that liquefied steel and bone. The first human line broke in seconds. But they didn't run. Reyes barked orders over cracked comms. "Flank him. Draw him toward the ridge." A small squad of reservists, barely trained and underarmed, moved like ghosts through the canyons. They knew the land. Every rock, every dip in elevation. One alien patrol followed, and never came back. A combination of buried IEDs, rigged propane tanks, and a kid with a scoped hunting rifle made sure of that. By dawn, the desert was smoking. Reyes had lost half his company, but so had the enemy. Across the ocean, Lagos burned. Alien ships hovered over the skyline, spewing mechanized units into the streets. They deployed suppression fields that dampened electronic signals, cutting power and communication. Civilians panicked. Then something unexpected happened. The gangs fought back. Not for money, not for turf, but because no one invades their streets. Adeobi Njoku, a former insurgent turned community leader, rallied hundreds. They had no tanks, no jets, just AK-47s, Molotovs, and rage. They coordinated with runners and painted symbols on walls to communicate under the jamming. Children delivered ammo. Old men shot from rooftops. And when an alien mech rolled down a major highway, it tripped a trap, an overpass rigged with fuel trucks. The explosion could be seen from miles away. The mech died in flames, and Lagos roared with defiance. At a data center in Seoul, war was being fought in silence. Yoon Min Jae, 26, autistic and reclusive, was one of the best hackers no one had heard of. He had watched the invasion unfold on satellite feeds scraped from buried government archives. As jammers went up, he switched to hardline connections and used legacy systems to break through. He found something in the alien code. Patterns, frequencies, syntax. Music almost. A language too efficient to be random. He spent 20 straight hours cracking it. And then, with trembling fingers, he uploaded a payload into their open relay channel. It wasn't a virus in the human sense. It was a loop, a recursive logic trap. When activated, it caused minor command delays in several ships. That was all. But that delay, measured in seconds, meant that a Ukrainian SAM battery, hidden in the Carpathians, scored a direct hit on a command vessel mid-landing. The alien sky armor-shattered, and humans watching from 100 miles away screamed in victory. The Zarashi noticed. Aboard the Ascendant Flame, Commander Zaurek watched as 3 more casualty reports flickered across his command table. "This planet is illogical," Zila hissed. "They're disorganized, disconnected. They should be crushed." Zaurek's voice was quiet. "They fight like they're not afraid to die." Zila pointed to the latest transmission, a grainy feed from a human soldier, smiling as he ran toward an alien tank with explosives strapped to his chest. "They're insane." Zaurek looked at her. "No, they are desperate." Back in New Mexico, Captain Reyes leaned against the scorched side of his tank, bandaged, bleeding, grinning. "We made him bleed," he said to no one. A private limped over, his face smudged with soot. "Sir, that was just the first wave." Reyes nodded. "Then we hit him again." He looked up at the sky, where more black dots began to appear. "Welcome to Earth," he muttered. "We don't die easy." Night had no meaning anymore. The stars were gone, drowned out by the glowing underbellies of alien warships. Earth's skies were black, not from darkness, but from smoke, ash, and fire. And still humans fought. In the ruins of Berlin, in the flooded streets of Jakarta, In the freezing forests of Alberta, they fought. They should have broken weeks ago. The Zarashi had deployed full-spectrum suppression, targeting power grids, satellite networks, water purification systems, even air filtration in underground bunkers. And yet, humanity adapted. Aboard the Ascendant Flame, Commander Zaurek watched through a tactical feed as Zarashi infantry was overrun outside of Sao Paulo. Their elite enforcers, each capable of erasing life in a 30-meter radius, had been dragged into alleyways and torn apart with machetes and kitchen knives. They were waiting for death, his officer muttered. No, Zaurek replied. They've accepted it. That's different. In what remained of Detroit, Project Blackthorn was born. Deep beneath the rubble of an abandoned GM factory, scientists, engineers, and former soldiers worked under flickering lights and recycled air. What they were building wasn't pretty. It wasn't safe, but it might work. They had salvaged broken alien tech, fusion coils, anti-grav plates, fragments of navigation software, and fused it with human hardware, fighter jet engines, steel hulls, drone AI systems. It took 36 days and cost 12 lives. But they built 6 ships. Ugly, loud, fast. Each one carried a pilot. Volunteers. Alicia Vega, a former test pilot grounded for disobeying orders, was the first to sign on. She didn't ask about survival odds. I'm not here to survive, she said. I'm here to make sure they don't. Meanwhile, Zarashi fleet coordination began to falter. Something in their network was breaking down. Commands were delayed. Targeting systems froze. Some drones turned mid-flight and crashed into friendly ships. Zaurek ordered diagnostics. The findings were disturbing. There's an intrusion in our architecture, said one technician, trembling. It's not disabling us. It's confusing us. The virus, if it could be called that, wasn't destructive. It was insightful. It mimicked Zarashi logic, introduced microscopic faults in command hierarchy, redefined protocols in ways undetectable to their scanners. It was like a ghost whispering in their code. And it had a name, Hanul. Yoon Min-jae had done the impossible. Working in darkness, powered by old car batteries and candlelight, he had created a self-replicating interference loop using their own language against them. And the fleet, once a flawless machine, began to choke on its own precision. In orbit, Zaurek faced the truth he had long feared. We underestimated them, he said. Zila, wounded from a failed ground campaign in Cairo, limped into the command deck. Then crush them, flatten the planet, end it. Zaurek shook his head. And become the first commander in our history to glass a world and still lose the war? No, we retreat. We document. We warn. But the Council can watch the footage, he interrupted, and understand what I now understand. He turned to the viewport. Below, the earth burned, but not in defeat, in rage. Blackthorn launched at midnight. The 6 hybrid ships screamed through the atmosphere, each piloted by someone with nothing left to lose. Zarashi orbital defenses, now glitching from Hanul, failed to track them properly, for were lost within minutes. A 5th ship, badly damaged, rammed into a destroyer and took it with her. Alicia Vega, in Blackthorn 1, punched through the chaos and raced toward the Ascendant Flame. Zaurek saw her coming too late. By the time his cannons activated, she was already piercing the outer hull. Inside the Ascendant Flame, alarms screamed. Zaurek moved toward the escape chamber. Smoke and heat bled through the walls. Power flickered. His guards collapsed under a hail of bullets. Vega emerged from the flames, limping, bleeding, smiling. You should have left us alone, she whispered. Then she detonated the fusion core strapped to her chest. Above Earth, the Ascendant Flame blossomed into white fire. Below, across every continent, alien forces stopped. Some shut down entirely. Others fled. Without their command node, they fractured, scattered. Of the original 9,900 ships, fewer than 300 remained. And they were leaving, not in triumph, in terror. And then there was silence. The war ended not with surrender, but with silence. The skies, once seething with alien metal, were empty now, smudged only by the drifting smoke of cities still burning. The few remaining Zarashi ships had broken formation, scattered into the void, leaving behind wreckage, confusion, and millions of their own dead. They hadn't expected to lose. Not to humans. Not to this planet. In the mountains of Chile, Captain Jordan Reyes awoke under a tarp made of stitched alien fabric. His side was wrapped in blood-soaked gauze, and he could barely feel his legs. A young medic, maybe 16, knelt beside him with a grin on his dirt-smudged face. "You lived, sir." Reyes blinked at the sky. Blue. Untouched. Familiar. "Did we win?" he asked, voice dry as sand. The boy looked toward the valley, where black alien wreckage littered the earth. "No, but they lost." Across the world, survivors crawled from bunkers, ruins, tunnels. Some blinked into sunlight for the first time in weeks. Others emerged to silence, still gripping rifles and crowbars. In Lagos, Adeobi Njoku climbed to the roof of what was once a school. Alien husks surrounded the building. Twisted metal, broken limbs, scorched plating. She lit a cigarette and stared into the horizon. Her city still stood, scarred, but standing. She radioed an open frequency. "If you can hear this, Lagos is free." Across the battered planet, more voices joined hers. Low, cracked, triumphant. "We held the line. Boston survived. Resistance still breathing in Kolkata. Tell the stars, Earth fights back." Above the atmosphere, among the debris field of ruined ships, a single escape pod drifted. Inside, Zaurek lived. Barely. He floated in silence, bleeding slowly, his once regal armor cracked and blackened. The AI in his pod kept him alive out of protocol. But there was no fleet waiting, no glory, only a whisper. Humanity. He would remember that word until his last breath. Not because of what they were, but because of what they became. Unpredictable, ruthless, united through pain, born to adapt, willing to suffer, determined to win even when losing was guaranteed. He'd seen worlds die with dignity, but Earth had lived through madness. A month later, a council convened on the Zarashi homeworld. What few ships had returned brought only fragments of data. Scrambled recordings, half-corrupted logs, images of ruined cities, and the face of one human woman in a cockpit, smiling as she flew into death. The High Council reviewed Zaurek's final transmission. "We were not prepared for what we encountered," his voice rasped. "They do not think as we do. They do not value survival above all. That makes them impossible to subjugate. Earth is no longer a viable conquest. I recommend we mark the system as dark. Untouchable." Gasps rippled through the chamber. "Cowardice," one elder spat. "No," another said softly. "Wisdom." They voted. Unanimously. The Earth system was locked in the archives. Forbidden. Years passed. The story of Earth became a legend among the stars. A warning to empires. A myth told to young Zarashi cadets in low voices. They were backward, divided, violent. We sent 9,900 ships to conquer them. Only a few lived to tell the tale. Back on Earth, the rebuilding began. There were no parades, no global celebrations, only quiet work, clearing rubble, burying the dead, wiring together power grids with scavenged parts. Yoon Min-jae never spoke to the media. He didn't want medals. He just wrote one final line of code and shut his laptop forever. Adeobi helped establish a global network of community defenses, vowing Earth would never be caught off guard again. And in a small field in New Mexico, a rusted metal plate was hammered into the dirt above a shallow grave. Alicia Vega. She didn't survive the war. She made sure we did. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, a new species wondered if they should visit the third planet from the Soul Star.